Hi, everyone. My name is Ambriehl Turrentine. I am the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications with Destiny City Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our 9th annual festival, and we're very happy to have it in person and virtual this year. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, thank you to the people I'm looking at on my screen right now for joining me today to speak about our films. These are the Evergreen Shorts, part of the Common Ground, a local film celebration package. So I will let everyone go ahead and introduce themselves. I know the people watching will have seen your films, but I'm not sure if you all have seen each other's films. So if you could say, introduce yourself with the films that you worked on, your role, and then just a little bit about the film, and we can go from there. And let's get started with Gloria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gloria. Thank you so much for including Life is a Gift. That is Moo Knowles and I's film. We were both co-directors, and I also did the cinematography and editing. And this film was a part of the Impact Lens Hilltopia Narrative Justice Film Fellowship, which was a really amazing experience. And yes, I'm just excited for this. Thank you again.
Maybe you want to follow up?
Yes, that was a great introduction. I wouldn't have remembered Hilltopia's full name, but Hilltopia, shout out to Impact Lens. My name is Moo Knowles, they, them pronouns. Born and raised in the historically Black Hilltop neighborhood. Known Gloria a long time, and it's been a long time coming for like specific collaboration between us both, and Impact Lens. The fellowship was just a great pathway for that. The film was really based around me and being in my head and in my body, and kind of my journey with exploring my Afro-indigeneity and my roots and my culture, and specifically this place-based relationship I have with the Hilltop. It's a very inextricable, I would say, relationship. So thank you for having us.
Thank you. And Lucy?
Hi, I'm Lucy Ostrander. I'm an independent documentary filmmaker based on Bainbridge Island. My film, Honor Thy Mother, is about the Bainbridge Island Indipino community and their Aboriginal and Indigenous mothers, many of whom were forced to attend Canadian Indian residential schools in the 1930s and early 40s, before they were recruited by Filipino immigrants who worked for Japanese American strawberry farmers on Bainbridge. And Bainbridge Island was the first community in the United States during World War II where Japanese Americans were rounded up and sent off to concentration camps. And most of the Japanese Americans on Bainbridge at that time were strawberry farmers, and they employed Filipino immigrants. And the Japanese Americans were given only 6 days to get all their affairs in order before they had to leave the island. So they turned to their Filipino farmhands, asked them to bring in the crops, pay the taxes, and save the land, which they did, but they needed additional help. And so they recruited, mainly from British Columbia, entire Indigenous families, as well as a lot of young Aboriginal women who'd been forced to attend these horrendous Indian residential schools. So in the spring of 1942, a number of these young women, they were teenagers, came down to Bainbridge to pick berries. And many of them fell in love with the Filipino immigrants, married, and started families. And the children from these marriages, as they started to reach adulthood and were looking for an identity for themselves, started to call themselves Indipinos. And so this is their story, their untold story, or untold until now. And their relationship with their mothers and the intergenerational trauma of growing up with mothers who had been forced to attend these Indian residential schools. So that's the film, Honor Thy Mother.
Thank you, Lucy. And over to David.
Well, I can't wait to check that out, Lucy. All the films. My name is David Over. I wrote and directed a ridiculous mockumentary called Mike Scissor about the underground world of professional chair wrestling, which is not a real thing. So I'm hearing your guys' films, and they sound way cooler and serious, and mine is completely ridiculous. So it's exciting to hear a very different style of filmmaking, and I can't wait to see all the films.
And thank you all again for joining us. So I guess, and some of you kind of touched on this in your introduction, but I just want to throw it out there. Could you talk about the genesis of each of your projects? And David, we can go ahead and start with you.
Our little 6-minute mockumentary is about a guy in his garage that likes to wrestle chairs which is like physically wrestling a chair as if you're a professional wrestler. And it's ridiculous. 12 years ago, I used to volunteer at a youth group. And one night, one of the leaders asked me if I would go and do like a skit in front of all the high school students. I said, absolutely. And he's like, will you go wrestle? And I said, I love wrestling. Of course I'll wrestle. And he goes, will you go wrestle a chair? I was like, I don't know what that means. And then he had asked if I'd wrestle the chair, then lose in front of all these kids. I was like, I still don't know what wrestling a chair means, but sure, I'll do it. But let me make a little 60-second video about a character I'll make up. So it's been a couple hours making a little 60-second video about a guy who wrestles chairs. And then 12 years later, had made about 60 or so short films. And then the same buddies and I, who we grew up with making films, decided, let's do another movie with this ridiculous guy in my garage. So that's where it came from.
Great. And Lucy, what was the genesis of your project?
I had made a film back in, I think, 2007 called Island Roots about the cultural history of the Bainbridge Island Filipino-American community. And one of the women that I interviewed for that film, Gina Corpus, who's Indipino, contacted me in the summer of 2019. She had a small grant and she wanted to do some oral histories of the Indipino community with the idea of eventually, of hopefully making a film. And so that's how the project started.
And then Moo and Gloria, you both talked about your long-term friendship. So could you talk about why you finally made a project together? And then also, could you kind of elaborate on the, I'm not going to remember the full name, but the Impact Lens Lab Narrative Justice Fellowship?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure, you can go.
Okay. I was, so I'll start off of talking about how we kind of, the genesis of it. And, you know, we've known each other. Our brothers were best friends growing up. We weren't quite connected as much, and we've just seen each other throughout life. We went to different middle schools and elementaries. Or I think, did we both go to McCarver at one point?
Yeah, we both went to McCarver, and Jason Lee too.
And Jason Lee. And then I think Gloria went to Bryant after that. But yeah, just kind of our lives just kept crisscrossing. And then we ended up being kind of coordination team members at this program called Black and Indigenous Organizing, BIO, which focuses on Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities and building solidarity through creative resistance. And a lot of our work there was mutual aid work, focusing on skill shares and redistributing resources such as groceries, food. And this was especially in the wake of the pandemic. A lot of our other focuses are building relationships with land, specifically for Afro-Indigenous people, Black people, brown people, and Indigenous people, reclaiming their relationship with land, right? Because these relationships have been skewed due to systems of oppression, such as colonization and enslavement, chattel enslavement. So really being able to forge our futures in a way that reclaims that space. We also focused on medicine as well. So me and Gloria were really in this very beautiful space together, creating, co-creating, and co-designing kind of our collective futures as really young people. This was around young people at the time, but we also did a lot of intergenerational work and healing work in the community. So I think that's kind of the place where we met again. And then after that, subsequently, we seen this opportunity, and Gloria reached out to me about the Impact Lens Fellowship. And maybe Gloria can talk a little more about kind of why she reached out to me, what that kind of looked like, trying to corral me to get to do this project, because she really did a really good job in supporting me and stepping in front of the camera. I've been a photographer, videographer, musician, poet my whole life. So I've been behind the scenes and not as present in front of the screen or in front of the camera. So she really brought me out of my shell in different ways that I wasn't used to.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Moo. Thank you so much for sharing that and just sharing about childhood and Black and Indigenous organizing. I would say Impact Lens. So Impact Lens, Impact Lens, Hilltopia, Narrative Justice Film Fellowship. Also, I believe the website is impact, impact-lens.org. I might have to edit that and send that to you directly. Anyways, it's a film fellowship for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. They really wanted to focus on documentary storytelling that wasn't extractive, and like trauma-informed storytelling, specifically documentary storytelling focused on Hilltop. I know a little bit of the backstory with Chimera, who is one of the people who facilitates the program. They really wanted to bring like Hilltop stories to life, but there's like so many different perspectives and multitudes of stories that come from the Hilltop. So I know Chimera's idea was to bring several stories to the surface, and I applied to it, and honestly there's just so many beautiful things on the Hilltop and so many stories to be told, but I reached out to Moo directly because Moo is like born and raised on the Hilltop. It's something really unique about like Moo's family, like having the same household on the Hilltop. Like that's really rare in the Hilltop community, with all the displacement and gentrification that has been going on for a long time and is still currently going on. And also just Moo's like, I mean, I don't know if Moo would call themselves a leader, but I see them as a leader. I think Moo's like leadership qualities and like wanting to make a change and doing things to actively make changes, and to like Moo still, like, despite all the craziness that can come from like growing up on the Hilltop, Moo like is still passionate about creating change and about I would just say just has this this sense of spirit that is sustained, you know, because I feel like, you know, you could grow up here and you could be like, dang, like forget my neighborhood, like I don't want to come back here. But I think what's really beautiful and special about Moo is that their spirit is, you know, sustained, and they want to help, and they do help like the generations coming after us, and at the same time wanting to pull like those intergenerational connections for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. So I think that was a big factor of why I asked Moo if they wanted to be a part of this project, just because of their spirit and their love for community, for themselves, and for other people that grow up here. And I will say it was, I guess, when Moo mentioned corralling, because Moo was like, you know, gave so much good feedback about different shots, and even in the production process, they took some of the filmmaking shots and had so many ideas for just the different locations. So Moo is a very passionate artist, and I'm just thankful that they trusted me to be a part of this process, because I could imagine, like, you know, as myself, like if someone was focusing on me, I'd probably be like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you change this around? I'm not sure about this sequencing. Like maybe we could put my song here. I don't know. And I do, sorry, I know this response is really long, but I do want to say that Moo recorded all of the audio recording. They recorded themselves. They wrote all that themselves. So I really feel like it was a co-directive process, really, in that way. And their words were like the backdrop for all of the scenes and all the B-roll and all of that. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for sharing. And I agree, Moo, what you wrote in the film is absolutely beautiful. And then I see that Hannah joined us. So Hannah, just to kind of catch you up to speed, would you like to introduce yourself, the film that you directed, and then just say a little bit about the film?
Yeah, sure. Sorry for being a few minutes late. So my name is Hannah. I was the director for the film Squatchman, which also was a ridiculous mockumentary. Certainly not one of your more serious ones. And it follows a young man who believes that his father was kidnapped by Bigfoot. And so he goes on a whole adventure to try and capture Bigfoot and get revenge. Yeah, it was made as my senior capstone project for our film school. My team and I, we went to Central Washington University and did the film program there. And so that was our big final film, which is very exciting. I'm also from Tacoma, so it was really exciting to be in here. I've been in Hilltop my whole life. I also went to Jason Lee. So yeah, I'm just very excited to be a part of this wonderful project.
Thank you so much. And while we're talking about mockumentaries and documentaries, for David and Hannah, I want to ask you, what about the mockumentary genre really appealed to you that you made the decision, like, yes, this is direction to go in for this film?
Do you want to go first?
Go for it.
I want to hear more about Squatch Man, so go first, please, please, please. I've seen the stills, and I'm very excited because I like Sasquatch, so you've got a fan already.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, for me personally, like, I love a good drama, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's enough downers in the world at the moment and just in general that I always want to bring more of that laughter into it. And I always tend to gravitate to more comedies and like mockumentary, kind of styles, because I want that escapism from a film, short film, TV show, whatever it may be. I think that's a lot of fun. And so to be able to put something out there like that myself is really rewarding. And also to do something so ridiculous and try and play it as though it's real life, I feel like adds a whole nother level to the comedy. Like, it's not trying to be fake necessarily. I mean, it obviously is, but it's like the fact that it kind of takes itself a little seriously, I think adds a lot more to the comedy when you look at stuff like The Office, which is kind of like the most known mockumentary TV show besides, like, say, Parks and Rec, which kind of stemmed from that. It's ridiculous because it's based in real life, but it is still ridiculous, and I love that. So I wanted to bring that to Squatch Man.
Great. And David, what about you?
Our production team had just finished doing a very serious, dramatic 10-minute movie that we were like contracted to do. So someone had hired us to deliver this 10-minute, very dramatic movie. It was like a 4-month project. There was like 60 camera setups, and we planned like 58 of those. We knew like every single beat of the movie before we made it, and it was like very stressful because we weren't making this for super rich people. They had like saved up all this money and wanted us to help tell their story. And so we were like really wanted to please them and deliver something for them that they were going to be very proud of. And it went well. And as soon as we were done with that, we were like, that was ridiculous. That was so stressful. Like, let's do something completely different. And so we wanted to do a mockumentary that was similar in length, 6 minutes. We planned like 2 shots. We didn't want to write a script. Our script is like just jokes. And then we kind of like in a documentary went back and reformatted the actual act structure after we filmed everything. And it was just really freeing to go from like making a movie where we're planning everything. We were trying to like manufacture what people feel in every frame before we even showed up to shoot, to like, we don't know what our coverage is going to be, but we're going to have tons of fun and just try to make each other laugh with some rough guidelines. And it was very freeing. I really enjoyed it. Definitely I'm going to be making more of them. And just from like the mechanics of production, like, it is super efficient. If you think about doing a narrative film where like you're pre-planning all of your camera setups and you're having to tell a story like shot by shot and build a sequence, like a third of all of your production is interviews, and those are like 1 camera setup. So we were able to shoot everything in a day. It's just super efficient and very forgiving, I would say, for like telling jokes if a focus isn't quite right. But the camera, it's just a very forgiving mockumentary, very forgiving format, I found. It's fun.
Gotcha. And Lucy, over to you. So I know, I believe you have a production company, right?
It consists of myself and my husband.
Gotcha. Okay. So could you talk about your production company and then also just your general principle of the films that you produce? Of course, we've seen Honor Thy Mother, but just how do you approach documentary storytelling?
I look for projects that I'm passionate about, that I deal with social justice. Many of my films have been about the World War II experience of Japanese Americans, certainly not all of them. You know, when I started making films decades ago, and people said, well, you know, how do you go about making a film? And I said, well, you know, for documentaries, for me, you have to choose a subject that you're absolutely passionate about, because you're going to run up against so many obstacles in terms of raising money and just the length it takes to make a film. And unless you're absolutely, you know, devoted to it, you'll never get it made. And so I choose subjects that I feel strongly about. And in terms of our company, my husband's a cinematographer and editor primarily, and I'm mainly a producer and director. And I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. And then a follow-up question. For Honor Thy Mother, you talked about the oral histories presented throughout the film, and those are also just remarkable stories to listen to. I'm curious, how did you get in touch with a lot of these speakers? And yeah, just kind of talk about how you got them to tell their story.
Well, Gina Corpus, who's the woman that had contacted me, she's the one who brought the Indopinos to the oral histories. And you know, this film was so unlike any other film I'd made, because usually the previous films, our films are generally historical. And so I read books, I talk to experts, you know, consultants, academics. And this film, there wasn't anybody to go. I mean, there weren't any books to read about this. And I didn't know really anything about the Indian residential schools. So hearing these stories for the first time, and I think for some of the Indopinos, maybe for all of the Indopinos, it was the first time that they had spoken about it, and certainly on camera. And I think it was just, as you see in the film, it was very emotional for them. And so in putting this together, it was, you know, I was learning about it as I was making it. It wasn't something I had researched ahead of time. And it wasn't something like you know, in previous films, I would do pre-interviews with the people that I thought I wanted to interview. So I knew the questions to ask. And this was just so different. So I was really learning as I, you know, sat there and interviewed them. And it was really powerful. And I think it makes for a really an emotional, powerful film.
Yeah, it definitely does, for sure. David, were you going to say something?
I was sorry. I was just going to ask one follow-up question for Lucy, if that's okay.
Sure.
I was just curious, like, because never done documentary before. I'm just curious what your like raw footage count was to the finished film as you're going. Like you said, you didn't do pre-interviews. You were doing interviews then and filming it. Like, what was your raw footage that you had to sift through and get to the final cut?
Each interview was maybe an hour and a half or so. And so, you know, we only used clips. And it was interesting because in terms of raising the money for the film, we put together about a 15-minute promotional reel of just some of these clips. And Gina submitted a grant to the Bainbridge Community Fund, which is a nonprofit that funds other nonprofits on the island. And they had a maximum that they would ever give to, you know, any nonprofit was $10,000. And that's what Gina asked for. But one of the members of the board had gone to school with some of the Indopinos and was so moved by these clips that we had put together. He was determined to help raise the entire budget. And so the grant was many times over that $10,000 grant. So we were, of course, very pleased, but it just showed how how emotional and how the Indopinos revealed their childhood and what it was like growing up, and the discrimination they faced on Bainbridge.
And of course, if any of the filmmakers have questions for another filmmaker, feel free to ask. I don't want to be, the only one asking questions. But my next question would be to Moo and Gloria. Something I really enjoyed about the film is that, for example, Moo's shirt says "carried by my ancestors," I believe, and I think in their writing and in what they say, there's some callbacks to history, but also it's very forward thinking. I jotted down, impoverished possibilities and then nutrient deficient destinations, which my interpretation at least were those lines speak to our history and even present day conditions, but again, they're still looking to the future. And then I also, after that, happened to read that Moo, you were described as an Afro-Indigenous futurist. So I just kind of want to ask more about that and the futuristic vision or the futurist vision of this film. How did that come about?
I can start and then I'll pass it to Gloria. Much of my futuristic foresight is born out of my genealogy, right? So I'm born of Black and Indigenous people. So I come from these very beautiful yet difficult histories, right? These stories that are being told, but also with this futuristic foresight, I'm able to kind of cast this dream. And it's not even just a dream, it's something that is a part of my process and practice in my daily life now, right? So a lot of what I was talking about in some of those writings is how we utilize things that aren't quite meant to benefit us, right? Aren't quite meant to heal us, aren't quite meant to provide for us. We use those things and we still sustain ourselves. And that, for one, is an Afro-Indigenous practice, right? So recycling is a very indigenous practice. Recycling is a very Afro-Indigenous practice, to where we're taking something and making it better than it ever could be, right? You think of popular culture in America and you think Black people, right? Or Indigenous people. And that just goes to show that the lot that we have been offered, the lot that we have been given by America and this historically marginalizing society has not stopped us from creating and forging a future for ourselves and sustaining ourselves. A lot of what I am envisioning is where we no longer have those barriers, right? And I'm in the writing, it's like where we currently still do have those barriers, and just how resilient, right? How resilient and how much resistance we have mustered up in order to create, to continue to give birth to new things, to continue to bring life to each other, right? To continue to sustain life in our communities. And I want to go back to the genealogy. A lot of that genealogy is born from Black matriarchs in my family, and Black femmes in my family. And that's how I come into my body, right? That's how I come into space. That is who is with me. My grandma right behind me, my aunties right behind me, literally in pictures, but mentally, physically, and spiritually, they are with me and they carry me and I carry them. And that is a relationship that is a mutual investment, right? A mutual investment in remembrance, but also in futuristic foresight, right? So that's a lot of how I go about telling stories, which is kind of why we're here. We're here to tell stories. And a lot of what I do is a body-based liberation, right? My embodiment, my spirit, and not just physical, but my physical and spiritual body. And that being at the expense for so long of colonialization, right? And enslavement and other forms of settler state violence, right? Settler state sanctioned violence at that. And this was also recorded at a very difficult time for Black folks in America, right? Me and Gloria's film. And I feel like that's the story we've been telling. We continue and still we rise, right? So we're continuing to create, we're continuing to forge these futures, and our prayer is that we will no longer be bound by these systems. We will be unbound, right? We will be unbound and liberated and free in a way that allows us to be in a liberated zone where our creativity is our birthright. Our existence is our birthright. We no longer have to even question it ourselves, and no one else has the power to even question it, right? So that's the rootedness that, you know, I come from, and I know Gloria as a filmmaker really helped me come out of that shell and realize, you know, doing the film helped me realize just how much of a storyteller I am. That's the thing about being disenfranchised in a world like this, is you can't even see your power because it's been disappeared so much, right? You can't even see the love for yourself because it's been disappeared. You've been called a misnomer your whole life, right? You've been basically associated with something negative, negatively associated your whole life. How can I then come into my body and say, I actually am deserved, right? I deserve to be here in this space and with you all today, but also I deserve to be able to have healthy food. I deserve to, you know, find love. I deserve to experience pleasure. I deserve to, right? I deserve to write. I deserve to create films. Even Gloria stepping into this place as a filmmaker, I don't know, you know, maybe you can talk about your experience in the past filmmaking, but honestly, I think this was like, I've made a few films and music videos in the past, but this has been my first time really doing a documentary and it being a liberated storytelling. We had no script. We went with the flow because that's our liberation. We're not here to try to fit someone else's standards, because even when we do, we can never reach that standard because we're not envisioned to be in that cookie cutter space, right? In that category. We don't fit in the categories. So guess what? We're going to form our own, right? We're going to forge our own category where we're able to create in a liberated fashion. So that's a little bit about the stories and where I'm coming from as a writer, but also as a filmmaker myself, right? So I'll pass it to Gloria.
Thanks, Moo. I was like, all the things. Can you say the question one more time, please? I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm trying to think, what was my question? Oh, it was about the futurist nature of what Moo's saying throughout the film. And just kind of what brought you to tell that story and through that lens specifically.
Gotcha. Yeah. I feel like Moo addressed it perfectly. I guess I could just give an example. Like we show like the 50-cent cakes. There's a couple of popular corner stores on the hilltop. And I guess I can give that as an example when it comes to like futurism or resilience. Is like, you know, we take these cakes or like these 50-cent cakes or a candle, and like that's enough for us to celebrate, you know what I mean? And there's a line in there similar to that in the film. And it's interesting because it's like, I think as a Black person, I'm like, we've been here so long, we've gone through so much trauma, and we still going through so much, but we still find ways to celebrate. And I think for me, when I think of futurism, I'm thinking about, I don't know, I just keep going back to our sense of our spirit and our well-being. Because like, you know, these things are just enough for us to celebrate. Like I don't know, for me it points to our spirit is enough. Like we've been through so much, but our spirit is still here, we're still here. And I think just that sense of being, of, you know, still having our spirit despite all this trauma, like that is what's carrying us into the future. You know, it's like we can experience like having these corner stores where there's no healthy food available, but we're still finding ways to celebrate. I think that's just who we are innately, and that's what's going to carry us into the future, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, it does. Thank you so much. And then my next question would be,
Can I ask
would
a
you have something to
question?
add?
Yes, I want to ask a question to Gloria. I'm really curious about something specifically about, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so within our process, it was just us two, you remember? Like it was just us, and we were working on this film, right? And there was so much that kind of like I have in my brain that I, felt like I wanted to get out. And we really had to like humble ourselves and be like, what can we actually do? And we gravitated towards corner stores being cornerstones and focusing on that kind of duality of both a harmful place, because corner stores, there's a lot of violence there, unhealthy food, but also how helpful in the relationships that are built at corner stores, right? And specifically Black folks' relationship with the corner store, and the beauty that comes from that. Especially around our capacity as two Black filmmakers, right, in this landscape, how do you feel? And you obviously were a part of a fellowship, but even within that, we really were on our own in many ways. When it comes to capacity for filmmaking, what do you feel when we film our next film? What do you feel when we film our next film would be really helpful for you to have as a filmmaker, as a Black filmmaker, and artist, to be successful and to really tell the stories we want to tell?
Oh, dang, that's a big question. Yeah, because I think filmmaking, I think just filmmaking in and of itself as a unique art form, because also I'm a writer, and I think writing can be a very solitary process. There can be collaboration with like editing, or if you're working on like if you're doing slam poetry, you could do like a group poem, things like that. But what I learned from this is like filmmaking is very, I feel like there's like, I don't know, it's very collaborative and there's space for everyone. So I think what would help me is probably having more collaborators, depending on the project, you know what I mean? Because I would be down to do something again where it's just, me and you, or but I think it would benefit to like include more people to be a part of it, and or we could have like meetings and be like, okay, you're going to focus on the audio editing, or you're going to focus on the production, or a couple people, like a few people focusing on production, a few people focusing on like interviewing, and maybe creating like the what do you call it? Not the screen board, but the somebody give me the name of it. It's like when you list out the shot list, and but I'm thinking of something where there's like squares and you can like draw storyboard. Yeah, not screen board, but yeah. Storyboard.
We know what you meant.
Yeah, so I think my immediate thought is like having more collaborators. Also, I mean, this filmmaking can't go without saying like money, to pay all those people, because I think that, like Moo mentioned, liberated zone, like even though I hate capitalism, we still live in a world of capitalism, and so I would want to pay everyone who's a part of the project in some way. And I think just more opportunities, or maybe we can create more opportunities for ourselves to celebrate our artwork, to celebrate our filmmaking, because a lot of film festivals, well, all film festivals, I know you have to like apply and everything, but I think it would just be cool to have more spaces for us to just put our art out there and get paid for it. Yeah. And like maybe outdoor screenings, things like that. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Moo, thank you so much for the question. And then I did want to toss it over to both David and Hannah, actually. So both of your films, of Mike Scissor and Squatch Man, have some forest scenery. I'd say Squatch Man is like primarily taking place in a foresty area, but I was just curious about how you found your location, and were there any challenges when you were shooting there?
We filmed we have a shot, it's like the only drone shot in our movie, and it's our main character sitting in a chair in the middle of the woods, and it drones out, and you just see like forest all around this guy all by himself. We filmed that up in Wilkerson, out like above a forest service road, and that is the place like I had gone to in the past. And one of the weird fun things that happened was, so in this little movie we made, I look ridiculous. I've got a funky mustache. I'm definitely much more overweight. And I'm like, I look ridiculous. And the same place is used to, like, people go up there to shoot guns. They're like shooting guns up there, like target practice in the woods. And I remember like standing in the middle of this road, and we're getting ready to film. And then this like giant truck drives by with like an American flag waving in the back. And these people are probably there to go shoot guns. And they drive like right up to us, and they're just kind of like slow down. They're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And we were just like, "We're just filming a movie." And they're like, "All right, well, we're going to shoot next to you if that's okay." And we were like, "We would prefer not to. We would like just to shoot our movie if that's all right." And they're like, "Okay." So we'll move down a little bit. So they moved like 10 feet down the road, still like right next to where we were standing. We were like, "All right, I think we're done. We'll probably just go film somewhere else." So we got our shot and left, but that's where we found it. It was up where people like to go shoot guns. It was fun.
And Hannah, what about you for Squatchman?
Well, I will say we ran into a similar problem with people shooting lots of guns and making a lot of noise. We were in Ellensburg for like our school, and that was where our actors were from and everything like that. So about a half an hour away is this town in the mountains called Cleon. Most people have probably heard of it. And a little far outside of that is this really little town that not as many people have heard of, which is called Roslyn. And up above Roslyn is like just a ton of woods and mountains and darkness. And so that's where we were. It was kind of a nightmare because whenever we wanted to film, most of our story does take place out in the wilderness. So we would have to drive like at least an hour up there, and we'd be there like all day and wouldn't come back home until, you know, way in the morning essentially. And yeah, we run into our fair share of people shooting and making noise and making it hard to film. It was certainly, it was really pretty. It was really pretty. And that was a nice reprieve because we decided, or not like we decided, but we were, you know, because this was a project for school, it had to be done like by springtime so that we could edit during essentially our spring quarter. So it was filmed during winter. So it was like January when we were out in the mountains, which was miserable. I have to say, you cannot tell when you watch it, but we were freezing our asses off. Like, oh, it was so bad. Our actors were such troopers. We were like, everybody bring as many layers as you can. We had to like set up a fire for while we weren't filming to try and keep people warm. And so that was a huge challenge. Not to mention, there were a couple of places that were up in that area that we had wanted to go specifically to get some certain shots. One of our locations that we filmed at in the woods was at this river, and we had a certain lake in mind. It's called Cooper Lake. It's really pretty up there, but it's quite a drive. And so when we actually went to go there to scout it when we were a little closer to filming and make sure it was all good to go, we could not even get there because it was so covered in snow. So it really caused us to have to think on the fly and figure out, okay, let's find a new river, or, you know, a new lake. Better do this fast and hope that the snow melts, and then it never did. So we ended up finding new places that were even better, which is cool, but definitely had a lot of challenges.
Ambriehl, I'm afraid I have to leave, but
Okay.
I want to thank you so much, and it was great hearing from the other filmmakers, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And then I was going to go ahead and start wrapping it up anyway. So my kind of final questions is just so you all can be thinking about it is essentially what do you want people to take away from your films? And I know David, Hannah, you said, you know, these are mockumentary comedies, so not as serious, but I still think it's a fair question to ask. So I will go ahead and start with David. What do you hope people take away from Mike Scissor, a chair wrestling documentary?
Our whole goal with the movie was just that hopefully people don't take themselves too seriously, and that was really the whole goal of this movie. We're the dude wrestling a chair in a garage. Like, I just hope people laugh a lot and take that.
And Hannah, what about for Squatchman? What do you hope people take away?
I think I really hope that people take away a lot of laughs. Similarly, I also think that they learn to take themselves not quite so seriously and know that everyone has their weird quirks. Everyone has something that they're like weirdly passionate about, and that's okay. And you just gotta be supportive of that. And hopefully it's not to a point that it's unhealthy, kind of like our main character, but you know, enjoy the weirdness of life.
And then Moo and Gloria, what do you hope people take away from Life is a Gift?
It's funny, we both are on the same film, so it's hard to know who goes first.
Let's say Gloria, you go first.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that people remember that their life is a gift, not to be cliche. By the way, it was inspired by this one of Moo's songs that plays in the credits, Life is a Gift. So I have to give shout out to that. But yes, I hope people remember that their life is a gift and that life is a gift, and that there is like goodness to celebrate within yourself and within your communities. I hope people remember to love themselves, or to at least have the awareness of that, and to love their communities. I also hope that people remember that they have the ability to create. I think one of the most powerful images throughout the film is the bike riding. And that's something else that came up when you brought up the question about futurism. Is like, you know, like we keep going, like, you know, us as Black people, or just oppressed peoples around the world, is like, you know, we have the spirit of resilience to like keep going. So and to create like the change that we want to see. So I just hope that people remember that they have the ability to create whatever it is that you would like to see.
Moo, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Gloria. The only thing I would add is healing our relationship to power, and knowing that with the agency and with the power we come into the world with, we get to choose what we utilize that power for, right? We get to utilize that power to maybe bring life. We get to utilize that power to heal others and be a kind present to others. And yeah, I think that line from the song was me saying, my mom had to live through this, you know, all of this, and she had 3 children that she raised, and she still took the time to create a healing environment where she would sustain our lives in our home, the home that you see in the film, right? That is the home that I've lived in for 24 years now. And that has been the foundation of me sustaining my life. So that too, just the power that my mom has reclaimed and utilized to bring life to me and my siblings and to so many others. So I want to take that time to thank my mom, because she was a huge inspiration to this story that we were telling, which is me, my life, and how I see the world. So thank you, Gloria, and thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for this interview. We appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for sharing all of your stories. And okay, do y'all have time for one more question? Because there's just one more thing I want to throw out to each of you. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, last thing. I just want to know if you have any upcoming projects, anything that you can share. So Moo, Gloria, y'all want to start with that one? I know you mentioned future collaborations.
I can't speak on those yet because we need to confirm them first. There is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things to come. Very magical things, I would say, to come for me and Gloria, and whether that's just ourselves in our own independent path, but also where our paths merge. I believe that, and I am ashe, ashe, that is to be, let it be. And for me, I am going to be focusing on intergenerational healing within the Black community in particular. A lot of the relationships between us and our elders, young people and our elders, is a bit skewed at times, when those bonds and those connections can actually bring life to our communities and actually support us in supporting each other, the more we tend those. So, and I'm also excited to start planting again. So the garden's kind of closed right now, right here at our house, but I'm excited that the spring is the time to sow the seeds. And then we'll reap the benefits in the summer and the fall. So.
Don't forget to mention your prints.
Oh, I am so bad at plugging myself. I'm also selling prints, which is like a out of the box thing for me to do. But the print is, do I say this? Do I say the sanctified poem in the film? I might. It's around Black liberation and it being sanctified, right, by our ancestors. So that is something that I'm selling on our website. The website is collectiveliberationinpractice.com. It's me and my partner's consulting business, but we're also doing a few goods that we're selling as well. So I guess I'll do that plug, thanks to Gloria. The prints, currently, I'm gonna continue the promo code. It's Black 11. It's called the Black Folks Freedom promo code, and the code is Black 11. So you just put that in. It's for Black folks, clearly. Anybody else should feel free to pay, feel free to pay full price. But yes, that is what I'm currently doing. Oh, thank you for putting that there. Pass it along to your friends or if you want one to put on your wall.
Thank you for sharing, Gloria. Upcoming projects or plugs?
Yeah, collectiveliberationinpractice.com. Just so y'all know, get your print. I got mine. And those words are actually in the film. So it's like, it's related, bam, bam. But I did just edit a book. It's called We Need a Reckoning. It's a women of color and non-binary people of color anthology. So you can check that out at bluecactuspress.com. I'm also selling a few poetry prints as well. I'm also hosting writing workshops. I just hosted one last week. Moo was actually there, and a lot of amazing people were there. And that's something I am going to be continually offering throughout the year. And I'm looking to collaborate with other organizations or colleges, universities, conferences and retreats, things like that, to host writing workshops. I came up with this saying last year: you have the right to heal, WRITE. And so all of my writing workshops are rooted in healing and personal development. But to stay in tune with what's going on, you can follow me on Instagram at WHOIS, who is Gloria, GLORIA, Joy, JOY. Or you can check out my Linktree, which is, I think it's Linktree/who is Gloria Joy. But that's a great way to stay in touch with me. Also, I'm sorry, I got to give one more plug, but y'all should get this shirt. It's made by Tiffany Hammonds and another collaborator of hers, but she's from the Hilltop and she's selling these really amazing shirts. So got to mention that. But yeah, thank you so much again.
Of course, thank you. And David, upcoming projects or plugs?
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat dinner with my family. I'm really excited for that. That's like my next immediate thing. And then I'm curious, seriously though, like a couple weekends ago, I just did the Lakewood 96-hour film competition, real life. Did anyone else do that? I know we're all Pierce County folks. No, Nobody
What
else?
is it called?
Oh, the city of Lakewood just did a 96-hour film competition where you make a movie in 96 hours, and it was a ton of fun. So I just finished that, did another 5-minute mockumentary, and then I'm producing and directing a comedy about people that go and catch lost pets and return them for the reward money, and that's how they make their living. So it's a ridiculous little comedy. We'll film here in Pierce County. So looking forward to doing that.
Very interesting. And then ending with Hannah, any upcoming projects or plugs you got?
Not really any upcoming projects at the moment. Certainly like to figure something out, but I only just relatively recently got out of school, so I'm kind of just trying to establish myself in like the film stuff in the area and in Seattle, which is a lot of fun. Definitely a new experience. But if you want to keep up with anything, feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's Hannah May Films. She's just Hannah and then May, like I spell it weird. It's not, my parents named me. It's MAE. And then Films, FILMS. But yeah, we'll see.
Great. Well, let us know, all of you. Keep us in the loop. Again, thank you so much for joining us. David, I hope you enjoy your dinner. Moo, Gloria, thank you so much for the film. Hannah, same thing to you. I really appreciated talking to all of you. And yeah, we will keep in touch. And again, thank you. Also, Lucy had to go early, but thank you to Lucy as well in her film, Honor Thy Mother. So yeah, thanks all of you. It was a great chat.
Is it okay if I mention really quick that Impact Lens website is actually, it's impact, IMPACT -lens, LENS.org, because they might be having more film fellowships in the future if you're interested in that. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gloria, David, Moo, Hannah, and Hannah's dog. I saw that. And of course, Lucy. Thank you to all of you. Really appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your night.